want to take it back to my childhood just a bit. My dad got on this kick when I was in middle elementary school, 10-ish, where once a year we'd take a Saturday during the summer and go to Salt Fork Lake, and we'd go boating. I hate boating. And I don't know if it was because of boating in general. I think it's because of the boat he always picked. It was a pontoon boat. I mean, what's exciting about a pontoon boat? You can't pick up any kind of speed, 10 miles an hour max. Hair, the wind's barely blowing whatever hair you got on your head. You can't tube off the back. There's no wake. You can't water ski. You can't get fast enough for it to even pick you up out of the water. But for a 10-year-old, a speedboat, that's what Dad needed to get. Because you could tube off the back. You could fish off that one too, I'm sure. You could water ski, and then you could just wave at all the pathetic families with young kids on pontoon boats. Sissies. But no, we were stuck on that pontoon boat. The pontoon boat did nothing for 10-year-old Bo. Speedboat. The adrenaline rush, man, that would have been so much better. But when you think about it, if you step back, a speedboat after the rush is a dangerous piece of metal and fiberglass. We're starting this, we're in the second week of this relationships series. We're comparing relationships that we have with types of boats, types of ships, and trying to learn how do we navigate through the ship. How do we navigate relationships? How do we get out of relationships? How do we maybe get into them? How do we work things out? Last week we dealt with sailboats, relationships we feel stuck in. Today we're dealing with the speedboat, which tend to be relationships a little more toxic, a little more dangerous, like speedboats in themselves. And one of the gifts of the Bible is full of stories, full of wisdom, full of advice. There are some stories that you wonder how in the world they got in there in the first place, because they're really sad stories. But in the case of today, dealing with speedboats, we're going to look at the guy named Lot in the book of Genesis. Now, he's around from Genesis 12 all the way through Genesis 19. We're not going to cover all of that in reading it, because that'll take 15 minutes, and I don't want to do that to anybody. But I'm going to tell you the story as we go through, and we'll read a couple passages. I want you to be verifying that this crazy stuff I want to tell you about, it really is in there. This stuff really happened. In the process of looking at his life, we'll both learn what it looks like to get into a speedboat relationship and what speedboat relationships can do to us in the process. First time we hear about Lot is in Genesis 12:4, where he is the nephew of Abraham, or Abram, who's going to one day be called Abraham. Abram was raising Lot because we can assume that Lot's dad had died. In that culture, when a man died, the wife and the children of that man were taken under the wing of the oldest living son or any other living son at that time. So Abraham was raising Lot. So when God told Abraham, I want you to follow me, go to this new land with me, because Lot was part of that group, Lot followed. They started up in what was modern-day Iran, went across to Iraq, went down through modern-day Syria, down through Israel, which didn't exist at that time, all the way into Egypt, which did exist at that time, and then back to Israel again. And all this time, their family was changing. Their family was growing. They were growing through marriages, through having kids. They were growing in their property. Their flocks were growing. God had blessed their flocks and livestock. And so they were hiring more and more servants to help them with all their managing of all their livestock and animals. So we come to a place where they're starting to have some conflict. Lot's men and Abraham's servants are kind of arguing. And so Lot comes to Abraham and says, listen, can we work something out? I need some space. So in Genesis 13, Abraham comes to Lot, and it's going to be back behind me. You can read along with me, Genesis 13, 8 and 9. Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left. Now, Abraham's intention here is not, I'm sick of you. You go that way, I'll go this way. He's like, no, how can we get along? How can we stay friends, stay close? You go that valley, I'll go this valley. We'll be close together, but because we have the space, we'll naturally get along better. Now, Lot's looking down. He's seeing the valleys beneath him. To the left, to the east, he sees this lush fields by the Jordan Basin. And to the right, to the west, is just barren wasteland. Easy selection. He's going east. Taking his crops and family down there, they parted ways. Now, what Lot didn't recognize in making this selection, or maybe he did, there were 2 cities down in that valley area. 2 cities that are known through many cultures to be 2 of the wickedest cities that ever existed in human history, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. On top of that, these cities at that time were under an occupation by a foreign country, and they were stirring up ideas of revolution possibly taking place. So that's what Lot was moving into. Now, he may have known, may not have fully known that at this time. Let's take a step back, though, all right? Why? What are these toxic speedboats relationships? Well, here's how we're going to look at them. These relationships are any kind of relationship that over time will compromise your primary relationships. And when I say primary relationships, I'm meaning 2 in particular. I'm talking about your relationship between you and God. That's what you're made for. Whether you acknowledge that or not, whether you accept it or not, that's fine. Hopefully at some point you will. But a speedboat relationship will over time compromise that relationship. Secondly is a relationship with your family. That can be a spouse. It can be your parents or your kids or your children, grandchildren. It can be your siblings. A speedboat relationship is any relationship that over time, maybe not immediately, will compromise those primary relationships in your life. So Lot sets up his tents outside of Sodom, it says, which might be the one good thing he does through his entire story. When I get prepared to preach, I like to talk with my staff sometime about, here's some ideas I'm throwing around because they're just coming from a different perspective. I'm missing anything. Nicole and I do that in the car sometime. She'll be like, oh, great, he preaches to you all week. Well, you didn't marry me, sorry. You're probably thinking, glad I didn't marry you. We talk about these, and sometimes she'll say something like, this that makes a whole lot of sense. So she's going to preach the next 2 minutes from her seat. I'm going to tell you what it is. You're like, oh, she's going to get up there? Not a chance. All right? Let me tell you what she said because it's great for today. She noted how on Facebook, we see a lot of things coming up about, you need to leave toxic relationships. Get out of those toxic relationships, which is okay, she says. But if all the good people are staying away from the toxic people, how are the toxic people ever going to know Jesus? How are they ever know what's good? How are they going to see close up how God can work and ultimately receive the gift of his gospel to change their lives? If we just we're going to stay churchy here. You get rid of your toxicity, how are they going to know how to get rid of it? Unless they meet Jesus through us. And so what I'm saying, a lot of it has to do with who you are. How secure you are in your identity, how strong you are in your convictions that can dictate how close you should get to these speedboat relationships. So Lot moved close, just outside the city of Sodom. So a good lesson to start with is, in dealing with speedboat people, move close, but not too close. Move close enough so they can see you. Close enough to be influenced by you, but not so close that they will influence and change you. And unfortunately, we're going to see in a little bit, Lot clearly, for who he was in his identity and where he was in his convictions and relationship with God, even moving outside the city, he was too close to Sodom, too close to that toxic relationship. One more thing, I want to ask this question. Well, why do people even choose these relationships that it can be so damaging? Because I don't think anybody thinks, I am going to be evil today. I want to burn my bridges. I can't wait to destroy my marriage. I want to abandon my kids. No one thinks that. When people get into these toxic relationships, more times than not, they're thinking about what that toxic relationship can do for me as opposed to what it might do to me. They're looking in the moment. What's it going to fix right now? What is it going to give me right now? As opposed to what will this relationship possibly do to me over a longer period of time? And that period of time could be weeks, months, years. And when I talk relationships, it can be a physical human-to-human relationship. It can be that innocent flirting that's going on in the workplace, which I tell you, if you're married, there's no such thing as innocent flirting. Or a full-blown affair. Over time, In the moment, it fixes something you think, but over time will eat away and destroy you. Pornography is another one. He said, that's not a relationship. Yes, it is. Because you're using imaginary women or imaginary men to fill a void that you are somehow missing by your own doing, usually, between you and your wife. You've pulled yourself away from your spouse, and now you're filling with some imaginary people that don't exist. That's a speedboat relationship. Any relationship like a Facebook relationship with someone you maybe used to know in the past, kind of know right now that's not your spouse, some emails, some Facebook Messenger, text messages, Snapchats, any relationship that's kind of private that excites you a little more than going home and seeing your husband. It happens. Or any relationship that you are drawn to that seems to fix something, like that Facebook relationship. It may fill the void of intimacy you're longing for in the moment, but really it's speedboat because it will eventually deteriorate the one God gave you with your spouse. And any relationship then that is rooted or started upon some kind of rush, some kind of addictive activity, some kind of really sketchy event, such as we get together to drink, we get together to recreational drug use, we get together to gamble. It's not that I want to be with those people necessarily, it's what I do when I'm with those people that I love and I need. In the moment, gives you the entertainment you're looking for, but eventually starts eating away at you. We may go to fill the void of happiness. We may go to fill the void of loneliness. People who are lonely may pick the next person there that will just give them some time of day, whether they're toxic or not. You're looking for an escape, like Lot. You're just looking for some freedom. Nothing wrong with any of these. The saddest one for me is people who pick these relationships by default because it's all they've ever known. Mom only had speedboat boyfriends. Dad only had speedboat men and women he had relationships with. It's all they've known, and so it is their normal. And that's why they pick it. But Lot didn't just get close. Lot got too close. As I mentioned before, there's a revolution stirring. Those leaders started gathering together around Sodom and Gomorrah. They're going to fight back, going to kick these guys out. Well, they caught word back at the capital city of the other empire, and they said, okay, we're done with this. They came in and just destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. They took Lot and his family and all the other inhabitants that they didn't kill and started trekking north to their own capital city to enslave them for the rest of their lives. See, here's where we start seeing what speedboat relationships can do to us, not just for us. It fixed that immediate problem for Lot. But over time, speedboat relationships like this one with Sodom, it made him vulnerable. It didn't make him stronger. By being in the vicinity of this toxic place, he and his family were vulnerable to captivity. Toxic people don't make you stronger. There might be people around you that make you stronger while you're near toxic people, but those people make you weaker. They make you more vulnerable. Pornography not only makes you vulnerable to the addiction, but it also makes your wife vulnerable to oppressive insecurity. That other relationship that is done privately over Messenger and Facebook and texting and Snapchat and whatever makes you vulnerable to a lot more lying to cover up. It makes your family vulnerable to its destruction. Gambling, and I don't just mean poker tables. I mean that conveniently placed lottery machine right at the exit of Meijer, both exits. Take 1 or a 10 or a 20. There's a rush at the beginning, but it can make you vulnerable to consuming you and not be able to pay a heating bill one day, or a house payment one day, or a car payment one day, or even saving up for college for your kid that you really wanted to do. Pick an addictive relationship. Pick a speedboat relationship. It will make you vulnerable, not strong. So this story then actually has a cool little turn. He's in captivity going north with the other army, and Abraham, who because Lot's his nephew, even though Lot moved away, still is his provider and his protector. Catches word, and so Abraham takes his 318 men. Abraham has no kids. This is how big his house was. 318 men. His servants' kids, his other relatives and their kids, all the men of the house went after Lot, killed off the army, rescued Lot and all his family and all his possessions, and brought him back home. The unfortunate part, it didn't change Lot. The next part of the story we find in Genesis 19, he's not just living outside of Sodom, he now has a house inside the city of Sodom. He keeps getting closer and closer to the people that are tearing him down and beating him up. So here we have this story now that I'm going to start reading a little bit for you. He's living in the city, and one evening 3 visitors come to see him. This is Genesis 19, starting at verse 4. I'm going to read this to you. I promise you, if kids, this is PG-13 or more. I'm just telling you. I'm not being sarcastic either. This is in the Bible. Before they had all gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. All the men, every single man in the city. They called to Lot, "Where are these men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we can have sex with them." We just read that in the Bible. Goes on. So Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do a wicked thing." Wait to see what he suggests. "Look, I have 2 daughters who've never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you so that you can do what you like to them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." The Bible, if you don't read it much, just might have got a little more interesting, didn't it? What makes a man not just protect guests, but offer his daughters to be raped by his neighbors, by his friends? How does a person get to that place? These were the same people he would sit at the city gates with. That's what happened. That's where he met these strangers. They met him at the gates. He was sitting with the people. These are the people he'd have lunch with, that he'd go do recreational activities with. These were his friends that were wanting to rape his guests. How does Lot get to this place? When you're in a speedboat relationship, you eventually become numb to what is wrong. You become numb to what is wrong, and nothing anymore draws you to what is right. You begin thinking a little more like they think. And maybe acting a little more like they act, because you didn't just get close, you got too close. The story, believe it or not, keeps escalating. Those 3 men reach out, pull Lot in, slam the door behind them to protect everything. These guys are still banging on the door. And then these 3 men, now we're going to find out they actually were angels, blinded all the men outside the door. So they're pounding on the door but cannot find the doorknob to get in. And these 3 men start begging Lot, "Get your wife, get your daughters, get your whole family, and head for the hills, because God's going to destroy this city tonight." So Lot starts talking to his wife, talking to his daughters. He then looks over to his sons-in-laws, who are going to marry, or soon to be son-in-laws. And they just start laughing at him. They don't think he's serious. This continues through the night until verse 15. With the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you'll be swept away when the city is punished." When he hesitated, you getting this? There are men outside his door, pounding down the door to rape his guests. These guests have brought him in and have blinded all the people outside the door. He sees this. He knows this. What more proof does he need that now is the time to get out? Why does a woman who's in an abusive relationship not leave? Not just not leave, I mean defend and protect their abuser. When everyone around them is saying, you got to get out. Why does a man keep sleeping with his secretary till his wife kicks him out of the house, to the point where she can't even pay the bills to keep their dream home? Why does he keep it up? Because after a while hanging out with speedboats, you become a speedboat. You become the very people that you never thought you would, that you never wanted to become in the first place. You talk like them. You think like them. You trust that you're being hurt and you probably deserved it, because that's what speedboats do to each other. And you can no longer see the right. Fortunately for Lot, again, these men stop asking him to come. They grab his hands and they start running, heading for the hills, literally to the mountains, with he and his wife and his girls. They just gave him one instruction, one thing: don't look back. We'll protect you. We'll get you to the neighboring city. Just don't look back. And this is one of the harshest realities of entering into a speedboat relationship that is toxic and slowly deteriorates your primary relationships, is that there are generational consequences. He leaves with his wife and his 2 girls. But his wife, like Lot, had become a speedboat. Those were her friends she was leaving. And as they were heading for the hills, she turns around and looks back to the city that she's going to miss and that she loves. And she dies instantaneously. The Bible says she turned into a pillar of salt and died the moment she turned back. Lot and his girls make it into the hills, and they live relatively isolated for the next few years. And the girls are starting to think, listen, I'm getting a little older. I want to have kids. How can we have kids living isolated? So these girls, who all they've known is speedboat relationships their whole life, have become speedboats themselves. So to have kids one at a time, they get their dad drunk and have sex with their dad. And that's where the genealogy of Lot began. And who knows what happened to his grandkids and great-grandkids, because decades earlier, Dad entered into a speedboat relationship and deteriorated to the point where he became a speedboat himself. So some of you are listening and you're wanting, okay, I'm around these people. I want to help these people. I want to help speedboats. I want them to see hope. Well, again, that's okay. Get close. Just don't get too close. In choosing these people, don't just think about what they can do for you. Determine what they can do to you. And if you are set in your convictions, if you're set in your identity, then get close, but not so close that they start changing you. Get close enough that because of your presence, they start becoming changed, but not so close that they become so influential and their crowd becomes so influential that they start changing who you are. But I know there's some of you too sitting here who every point we've gone down, you can say, yes, that's me, help. All my friends are speedboats. My boyfriend's a speedboat. My girlfriend's a speedboat. My parents are speedboats. My older siblings are speedboats. And I'm becoming one. Help. Here's a part of the story I hope none of you missed. 3 parts. The moment Abraham and Lot stood at the mountain, made the decision. Why did Abraham make the decision? He gave him the offer, not so they could sever a relationship, but that they can stay strong and stay in their strong relationship. Why? Several chapters later, he's captured and Abraham chases him down and brings him back home. And in chapter 19, you have 3 angels grabbing Lot's hand when he hesitates and deliver him to safety. I hope you don't miss in this story, this horrible story, that God was always providing an out. Unfortunately, Lot couldn't see it, but God is always providing an out for you. It may be as simple as getting to rehab. That's just not simple. You may be waiting for God to come touch your mind, touch your heart, and just heal you of it. But you have to respond with an action. It may involve you getting some accountability software on your phone or your computer to protect you from that porn, or going to a counselor. Even if you're 70 years old, I've seen it in the life of over 70-year-old man, church, it works. It may be something as simple, not simple, I say it's simple, it's not simple. Maybe it's changing jobs because that man or woman you work with. Yes, it may involve taking less money, but is several $1,000s more a year worth saving your family? Maybe it's changing your restaurant because you and that waiter, that server, that manager, that waitress like to flirt a little bit. Maybe it's unfriending some people on Facebook and ending these relationships, or allowing your husband or your wife to get into your Facebook account whenever they want. Look at all your messages, all your Snapchat. Get off of Snapchat because they all delete. Protect yourself. Protect your marriage. And some of you, you're married to him. You're married to her. I've seen marriages that should not have made it, make it. So I'm not saying you to stay at the home and keep getting beat up, keep getting raped, keep getting hurt. Not saying that. I'm saying stay close, just not too close. Find safety in the moment. But get close. Actually get too close to some people here at church who will make you stronger. Get too close to Jesus.